This is a sports catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Davitt. Welcome you to another sports catastrophe on this day. On this day, on June the 17th, 1976, it was official. The ABA was going to come to the NBA. There would be a merger and all that. So the merger was finally consummated. So the NBA was a monopoly, if you will, with a lot of teams and all that. Unfortunately, though, there would be a rival league called the American Basketball Association, which was created in 1968 to create competition to the NBA and to bring cities that didn't have an NBA team to play huge basketball and all that. So, anyway, the ABA wanted for some merger with the NBA, repeating what the American Football League did to the NFL by forcing the NFL to merge too. All that. ABA officials told prospective owners that they could get an ABA team for half of what it costs to get an NBA expansion team. And all that. The weird thing was that, the AFL and the World Hockey Association, the later rival for the NHL, the owners were actually amenable to a merger early on. In June 1970, they actually voted 13-4 to merge all that to try to get an antitrust law and make it a 28-team league that would retain the NBA name. Yeah, the Seattle owner, Sam Schulman, was so eager to merge the leagues that he said that if the NBA did not accept the merger agreement with the ABA, he would move the Sonics to the ABA. And also threatened to move his team to Los Angeles to compete with the Lakers. So anyway, things were clamoring for a rivalry. Unfortunately, there was one tiny little problem. There was an Oscar Robertson suit against the NBA. Yeah. After the NBA voted to merge with the NBA Players Association, which Oscar Robertson was the main guy, filed a lawsuit April 1970 to prevent the merger on antitrust grounds and all of that. The existence of the ABA was resulted in increased salaries for players in both leagues, as the ABA and NBA would compete to sign players. The Robertson suit was finally settled February 1976. And it was like unbelievable what happened with the litigation. Yeah, it was weird that the NBA actually was willing to merge. I mean, the NFL didn't want to merge with the AFL. The NHL didn't want to really merge with the WHA, but the NBA said, sure, why not? But of course, Oscar Robertson kind of blocked it and all that. The ABA went powerful. They had the 3-point line. They had the red, white, and blue basketball. They had the slam dunks and all that. They had this pizzazz, if you will. There was even a congressional action to allow the merger, despite the Oscar Robertson suit. But it didn't really work out that well. As a result of the merger legislation not being enacted and the Oscar Robertson suit continuing, they couldn't merge till 1976. People were anticipating interleague competition and all that. So anyway, the ABA had their final season in 1976. Before the 1976 season, the Nuggets and Nets, well, the Denver Nuggets and New York Nets, applied to join the NBA. Anyway, they also wanted the Kentucky Colonels to join their leap to the NBA. But the owner, John Brown, who would soon be head of Kentucky Fried Chicken, said he was loyal to the ABA. So basically, the Nets and Nuggets were forced to play a lame duck season in the ABA by court order. All that. There was a lot of ill will within the ABA. So anyway, the ABA had problems headed into the 1976 season. Memphis, San Diego, and Utah all folded before the end of 1975. and Virginia would limp in before folding early in 1976. Memphis would move to Baltimore to beat the Claws, but after failing to post a performance bond, aka money thing, the Claws were declawed, if you will. San Diego would fold in 3 weeks into the season. They had terrible attendance. They figured that their team would be excluded from any merger talks because LA Lakers owner Jack Kent Cook did not want competition in Southern California for either his team or his TV coverage. So they went into a dispersal draft. Utah would fold by December 1975, not making payroll and all that. The Stars owner was actually out of money because he was trying to become governor of Colorado and spent all his money trying to get that thing and all that. Fortunately, though, Daniels actually paid back all Stars ticket holders in full plus interest. There were rumors that Utah and St. Louis would merge, but Utah folded before it could happen. Most of the Utah players, including Moses Malone, were sold to St. Louis, but the ABA cut down to 7. They abandoned divisional play and just played within themselves. But they would be down to 6 as Virginia, who was a decent team in the ABA, and brought attention to that state, especially after Rick Barry refused to play in Virginia because he didn't want his kids, including future NBA player Brett Barry, to speak in a Southern drawl. Virginia had problems because they had to sell Dr. J, Rick Barry, George Gervin, Billy Pulitz, and Spud Nader, among others, due to constant financial problems. They were successful, but then they've completely botched it. The Squires were fighting just to survive. But unfortunately, the league folded them by the end of the 76 season, and there was no chance of them being included in any merger. And the Squires were a regional franchise as is, playing home games in 3 Virginia cities. And none of the home cities could support an NBA team. So the Squires retired their thing. Kentucky faced Indiana in the first round and beat them before the Nuggets beat Kentucky in 7 games. The Nuggets would lose the ABA Finals to the New York Nets with Dr. J doing their job. Denver tried. Dan Izzo and David Thompson were good, but the Nets had Dr. J. Now, if you follow my stuff, and soon I will be releasing an NBA style tournament that will have the great teams package from Pro Replay Baseball, basketball, PC Replay Basketball, and the 2 teams that made the 76 finals, the Nuggets and the Nets, are in there. You'll get some teams and all that. Well, all 6 teams were still standing. Well, anyway, St. Louis must out. Yes. So Indy, Kentucky, Denver, New York, San Antonio, and St. Louis were still standing and all that. So the merger was finally consummated on June 17, 1976. So the Colonels were one of the strongest franchises within the ABA and all that. And they had good attendance and all that. Yeah, that's to the Nuggets and all that. Unfortunately, John Brown sold Dan Izzo to Baltimore. Of course, the money didn't arrive, so Brown sent Izzo to the Nuggets and all that. It turned off a lot of Colonels fans because, Izzo played for the University of Kentucky and all that. So anyway, the ABA negotiations, they would accept 4 teams. The Nuggets and Nets were obvious choices. The Spurs had good attendance numbers. And the Colonels looked like they would be the 4th team and all that. But Chicago wasn't too pleased with it. There was a reason, because they didn't want they wanted Artis Gilmore, who still had his NBA rights taken by the Bulls. The Bulls did not want Kentucky in the merger because that means they would lose Artis Gilmore and the chances and all that. So, Brown saw the writing on the wall and decided to fold the Colonels for cash instead of fighting. So they reached a financial agreement for $3 million. All that. The Kentucky players would be in a dispersal draft. Chicago used $1.1 million to get Artis Gilmore back. Portland took Mo Lucas for $300,000, and he helped them win the 1977 title. Jan Van Brandekov went to the Nets, and the Spurs took Louis Dampier for $20,000. Brown actually turned around with the money and bought the Buffalo Braves of the NBA for $1.5 million, and then turned the Braves ownership into ownership for the Celtics, which actually worked out. The other team that folded, St. Louis, had the Silnut brothers, and they were decent and all that. There were rumors circulating that they would move to Utah, and there would be a rumor, and St. Louis would merge with Utah, but because Utah folded in the tournament, that wasn't going to happen. And all that. So anyway, the Silnas had the thing going all that. They went into a special dispersal draft. Marvin Barnes went to Detroit for $500,000. Moses Malone went to Portland for $300,000, but they turned around and got rid of him because he was not part of the 77 Blazers that won the title. Mike Barr went to Kansas City for $15,000. So anyway, the St. Louis owners would get $2.2 million of cash up front in addition to a share of the revenues in TV revenues in perpetuity. As the NBA's popularity exploded in the 80s and 90s, the TV rights were sold to CBS, then NBC, and of course TNT and TBS. So the revenue meant that there would be a $500 million payment to the Silnas, which was amazing. So there were terms for the 4 ABA teams to jump to the NBA: Denver, Indiana, New York, and San Antonio. The arrival would be an expansion, not a merger. Each of the 4 remaining ABA teams had to pay a $3.2 million expansion fee to the NBA by September 15th. The Nets would have to pay $4.8 million in indemnity costs to the New York Knicks because, they're taking away competition to compete with the Knicks and all that to invade the New York area. The 4 ABA teams would get no TV money at all during the first 3 seasons, and in perpetuity would pay 1/7 of their annual TV revenues to the owners of St. Louis. The remaining players, Kentucky and St. Louis went to this dispersal draft, and the 4 ABA teams could not compete in the NBA draft. It was a weird draft and all that. Actually, the Nets actually offered their superstar, Dr. J, to the Knicks in return for waiving the indemnity, but the Knicks declined the offer. The Nets couldn't afford Irving and sent him to Philly for $3 million. So practically, they traded their franchise player for a berth in the NBA, if you will. So that was just huge and all that for the 4 teams. The Denver Nuggets, they were the Denver Rockets. But then, in anticipation of a merger, they decided to turn themselves into the Nuggets because, the Rockets name was used in the NBA for Houston. The Nuggets actually finished with 50 wins and won the Midwest Division, even though it was their first NBA season and all that. They had become a decent team in the 80s, but they just couldn't get enough defense to smooth over their offense and all that. And just this past year, 2023, they won their first NBA title. The San Antonio Spurs would win NBA division titles in 5 of their first 6 NBA seasons, thanks to George the Iceman Gervin and all that. They went through a decline, and then by 1997, 99, when they had both Tim Duncan and David Robinson, they won the NBA title, becoming the first former ABA team to reach and win the NBA Finals. And until the Nuggets did so, the Spurs were the only team of the 4 ABA eras to win a title. Well, that they've won 4 titles after 99: 03, 05, 07, and 14. The Pacers, were the strongest team on the court in the box office. Unfortunately, the merger caught them at an awkward moment and all that. They had to unload their stars to get money. in part thanks to a telethon led by Nancy Leonard, who was the wife of Coach Bobby Leonard, and which 30 for 30 did a short on it. The Pacers managed to jump from 7,600 people to 10,000 people. Yeah, they did a telethon to survive into their second NBA season, which was weird and all that. The Pacers had problems, but then by the mid 90s, they became a reasonable team. The Nets, handicapped by the financial penalties, had to sell Dr. J to Philadelphia and put up 22 wins in that one. So they were the New York Nets. And then they would move to New Jersey, kind of to get out of New York's shadow and all that. They would struggle and all that. By the 2000s, they were back in things and looked pretty good and all that. The Nets owner Roy Bowe actually said the merger agreement killed the Nets as an NBA franchise. It got us into the NBA, but it forced me to destroy the team by selling Dr. J to pay the bill because, New York had the thing. And, the ABA would contribute the 3-point shot, although it would wait till 1979 to adopt it. The slam dunk contest was huge, but the NBA would not hold one until 1984. Faster pace of play, drafting underclassmen, all that. The NBA did not allow college underclassmen to enter the league, so you would have to play all 4 years, all that. So there would be a lot of legacy and all that for this merger. And it helped a lot of franchises out. So bite me. Anyhow, I'm Jeff. I'm going to do